Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Human Nature Podcast. I'm Jamie Clements.
I'm Louis Blake.
And today we are joined by, after that conversation we've just had, the one and only Africa Brooke. If you don't know Africa, you're in for a real treat and you're about to find out exactly who she is and what she's about. And if you do know, lucky you, you know what she's all about. So Africa, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel so excited because I know you both. We've had the chance to interact at different points in the past year, and to see you two together in this way is just, it's so exciting. So thank you.
Should have seen us yesterday. Jamie was getting choked. I let him have a couple.
Our first time rolling together at jiu-jitsu, but we'll do that in a solo episode. We'll come back to that, guys. First question we ask everybody, which I think you'll hopefully enjoy.
Okay.
With no reference to your past or your work, who is Africa Brooke?
Oh, okay. With no reference to my past or to my work. Africa is a very curious person. She's a very reflective person, playful, a little naughty. There's a lot of mischief running through her, but it kind of fuels her curiosity. And she's a student. I really like to learn. I feel like I'm forever a student. There's nothing and no one that I can't learn from.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about labels and language before we came on air, and sometimes the helpful nature of them, but also the limitations of them. How do you relate to, someone maybe asking the question of who are you?
Yeah.
When there is that full spectrum of work and identity pieces and all of that stuff, how do you relate to that self-identification piece?
That's a good question. And I'd also love to know from both of you, because and it's a conversation I was having recently about when you go to social events that all three of us go to often. It's usually one of the first things people ask you, oh, so what do you do? And I remember I used to get quite triggered, for lack of a better way to put it, around that question, because it felt as if it's a way for people to assess your value in the social interaction. Are you worthy of me interacting with you in this moment in time? But then I realized that for me to assume that that is everyone's default, there's something really cynical about that. I think there's just a cultural norm where people don't know what else to say to someone that they've just met. And I also think, though, my insecurity, which led to me being triggered, was because I didn't know how to explain what it is that I do. And I wonder if you would both resonate with that. So I think for me, it was very layered, because even though I understand the use of labels, so for me, in worldly terms, what I do, I'm a writer, I am a consultant, I am a developmental coach, I'm a speaker, but these are all vehicles. That's why I think they can be so vague at points, because they are just vehicles for me to understand the human condition. I study self-censorship and self-sabotage. They are the two main areas of focus in terms of what I explore, my areas of fascination and work. So when leading with, I'm a writer, I'm a coach, I'm a consultant, I'm a speaker, to me doesn't tell you much about what I do, because they're vehicles. So I kind of prefer to have the space to get into the intricacies of my areas of fascination. I'm fascinated by the things we hide from the world. I'm fascinated by the masks that we wear and the way those masks actually take over who we are, and the things that we hide under the carpet, just hoping no one ever finds out, but they manifest anyway. So that gives you more of a picture. But I do, as I was saying before we started, I definitely understand the utility of labels. I'm just very careful about not leading with them. Similar to identity-based labels around me being a woman, me being a Black woman, me being a person that people assume to be left-leaning, whatever that means. I find that I would just rather allow for my existence, even in that moment, speak for itself, instead of me saying, I am this, full stop. So that's kind of my,
What process did you go to arrive there? Because I feel like a lot of us can take on, we can adopt what we assume to be the typical traits or hobbies or
Yeah.
of who we define ourselves as based on maybe where we grow up or our race or our age or even our gender. So
Yeah.
was there a process for you, perhaps a realization of, oh, actually the things that I'm supposed to like or be or feel, I don't, and perhaps there's something else. Was there maybe a moment or a process?
You know what? I think there are points where there's been some kind of process and realization, and I'll share that. But I'll be honest, I think it's my upbringing in the sense that I was born and raised in Zimbabwe, and then we came to the UK when I was very young. I was 9 years old. So by definition, we are immigrants, right? And there was also the added layer of the class that my family had come from, very, very poor. My mother and her siblings were the first in the lineage to ever go to school and university. So there's also labels attached to that, poverty and poor, and then immigrant. And then you come to a country that is majority white, and then you're racialized. I didn't know that I was Black until I came here. I never had to think about it. So there's all of these external labels and identities that are placed onto you. But once there's a label, there's an expectation for you to act according to that label, whatever that is, right? But the beauty of my family and how I was raised is that those labels were never used. I never heard the word immigrant. My mother never reminded us that we were different and we're Black and we're immigrant and now we have to. There was just none of that. So I think when I was then growing up and starting to be in chosen social circles of people saying, oh, you're an immigrant. Oh, you were born in this way. Oh, you're this kind of Black person. Or I sort of assimilated in order to fit in, but it just never connected with me. So by the time that, let's say, I found myself later in life being part of social justice movements that are very identity based, and just the world that we live in, which is very, very identity obsessed, I found myself almost agreeing and taking on labels because I'm expected to. But if I'm completely honest, it was never ever embodied. Like, I believe this, which is where the self-censorship piece comes in and has been a big part of my process to realize that I'm taking on so many labels and identities that are placed onto me, but they're not actually chosen. And then I had to make the choice, do I double down in order to fit in and I take them on and perform that kind of performance thing, right? Or am I willing to be the maverick that goes against the grain and you potentially lose your community? You know, you potentially stop belonging for a certain period of time until you find other outsiders. So I don't think there's like one clean sort of linear process. There's different sort of fragments over time where I'm like, oh shit, okay, I can see that I internally, from a place of integrity, did not agree with this label that was placed onto me, but I chose it so that I could fit in, you know. What about you guys
I'm
around this?
really excited for where this is heading, because one thing I was thinking about on the way here is how I show up literally in this environment, on this podcast, on podcasts in general. And I know in myself that I have such a long history of self-censorship, of potentially kind of masking, of adaptability, of fitting in, of molding myself, of really just trying to subconsciously and at times consciously turn into something to be accepted. And even in this podcast, and we've spoken about this before as well in terms of life more broadly, the number of times, there's one conversation that stands out with a friend of mine particularly, where we'd known each other through social media. She'd seen my online presentation of myself, and we had a 2-hour car ride, and she went, at the end of it, she was like, that wasn't what I was expecting. I was like, what do you mean? She was like, there was a lightness and a humor and a darkness and all of these parts of myself that I do love and appreciate. But for some reason, even in an environment like this on a podcast, I still can watch and witness myself go to a place of seriousness. And I think a lot of people, and I'm sure people watching this who know me, and maybe people that don't know me, would watch the episodes and go, quite a serious guy, like deep thinker, serious guy. And then people who know me, like at depth, would be like, dark humor, you know, all of these subtler aspects that perhaps don't see the light of day as often as perhaps I'd like them to.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the question that I have off the back of that is, what is at the root of self-censorship? Ultimately, a big question, but what is at the root of it, and why, even in the awareness of it and the desire to move beyond it, do we still fall back into familiar patterns?
And I mean, anyone that's familiar with me and my work will know that I always think it's important to give very clear definitions of what we're talking about, because I think we mainly hear the word censorship in the context of big tech censorship, all of these huge, massive things that are external to us, right? Whereas self-censorship is probably a term that most people might not be familiar with. It's not a term many people sort of use in their day-to-day, but we're so intimately familiar with it. So self-censorship is when you're withholding your speech, your ideas, your general expression, even the way that you dress, the way you adorn your body. You're withholding whatever your truest expression is because you're afraid on a very unconscious level that you're going to be punished for it, that you're going to be rejected for it. You're going to be, there's some kind of shame attached to it. If I fully say what I want to say or express this thought, or people find out this is my worldview, I'm going to be punished for it, right? So we choose to conform instead. And there's nothing, conforming is something that we all do anyway. In order to fit into a society like the society we live in, you do have to kind of conform and compromise here and there. But self-censorship is driven by fear. And I never want people to confuse it with social filtering. Okay, so social filtering is something that we all do consciously and unconsciously, but we call it reading the room. You have to read the fucking room, okay? Who's your audience, right? Is this appropriate to say right now? And the reason I really want to allow for people, before we dive into this part, to know that there's a difference, because I don't want you to always think that when you're holding certain things back, you're self-censoring. Because when you were speaking, I was maybe thinking, Jamie, that there might be a part of you that feels that if you're not showing all of those parts that you did with your friend in the car, then maybe you're not being fully in integrity. And I don't think that's always the case. If you know yourself enough to know when maybe there is a little bit of that, you know. But social filtering is discernment. You're discerning. There's behavioral flexibility. If I am coming to work or having a certain type of conversation, I'm probably going to swear a little bit less. Even though I love to swear, I'm probably going to rein it in just a touch. But if I'm speaking with you two, I know that I can kind of go there a little bit. But then I also have to understand your audience. So I know that I have to sort of, it's behavioral flexibility, which is an incredible skill. Because have you ever met people who are the exact same in every situation, and it works against them? And you're like, if only you could just adjust. It's like, we get it, you're expressive, you say what you think, but in some places, you know? So I think people can feel like they need to go to the extreme of, I don't self-censor. And then there's the extreme of, I completely self-edit all the time. But where they end up holding hands is that they're both ineffective in how they communicate because they don't have the behavioral flexibility. So self-censorship is driven by fear. And then social filtering is grounded in discernment. Even if you're afraid or uncomfortable, there's a level of discernment to it.
Raises an interesting thought for me around the language and the concept of authenticity. Because it's something that online in these conversations gets thrown. It's a very easy word to throw out. I just want to be authentic. I just want to be myself. I just want to show up authentically. And I think there might be a slightly shadowy side to that in what you're saying here, which is the shame that can show up where you believe that you might be self-censoring when in fact you're actually just being tactful and demonstrating that discernment. Right. And so where for you is that line of actually what is healthy expressive,ness and showing up authentically versus where we might be going too far one way or the other?
Oh, let me think about that. You know what? I think it's like I think it's a moment to moment thing. I really think so. And I think because I'm in constant practice of expressing myself courageously, especially in romantic relationships. And we will get there.
Let's get it.
We will get there, because and I say that it's a constant practice, like so many things, because there's no destination to brave expression. You don't sort of arrive and then you get a certificate that says you have completed. It just isn't. It's in the micro moments. It's in the moments where you're feeling uncomfortable about something, but you don't actually say it because you think, but it's too small for me to say something, or I don't want to ruin the moment, or I don't want to upset the person, or we had a disagreement yesterday. If I say something today, so you negotiate, right? So for me, it really is a moment to moment thing, because also depending on your capacity internally, what mood am I in? Have I eaten? Have I slept well? It's like a constant dance, I feel. And I think that keeps me very humble, actually, instead of feeling like just because I have the intellectual property to understand all of these things and I have the knowledge I've acquired and I can talk about it confidently, that I will never experience a discomfort. But I think also there's a fundamental self-trust. I really do trust myself, and it's taken a very long time, but I credit sobriety to that, where I've really had to pay attention to myself somatically and to know what I feel and to check in on discomfort. Because similar to you, Louis, we've had conversations about this briefly. I'm a very, by default, a neck up person, in the sense that I intellectualize and analyze. That's kind of my default. And it makes me very good at my work and what I do. It makes me very good at understanding people. But sometimes where I actually need to be feeling something and being with it, I'll intellectualize and go into solution mode way too quickly. So for me, it's been very good to actually pay attention to my somatic experience and see how uncomfortable I am. And then I use that as sort of like a thermometer to gauge what I need to do in a situation. Do I actually need to speak up right now? Or do I need to hold it for a moment and sit with it and understand it before I say something? Is this something that I need to say publicly, or is this something that I need to say privately? So it's like a constant checking in, I feel.
It's a space before that, I believe, which is regulating our state.
Yes.
So that the response that we choose is aligned with the outcome that we want, or the intention that we have, more importantly, right? So I think in those situations, it's controlling that gap between emotion and response.
Yes.
And very often we're not in touch with our self, our body. We're still in the head, and we want to respond quickly as opposed to just feeling that, right? And so to go back to our first point, you're in a new room. There's lots of new people. You perhaps feel a little bit anxious. You don't know anyone else there. Someone makes conversation with you and you jump straight into, oh, so what do? Maybe the narrative that's running, and I can speak to this because I felt this many times, is I want to show this person that I'm interested in them, that I'm an interesting person, I'm worthy of their time. You have all these thoughts running, whereas you could just, what are you excited about at the moment? It's such a different energy that you're in and that you invite that person into.
It's vulnerable, right?
It's vulnerable. And I think that it goes against the cultural narrative at the moment, which is you build an identity of yourself online.
Yeah.
And then in person, you try to protect that identity and live up to it. Right. And especially this is almost like this kind of juxtaposition between the bigger your identity builds online, the more you have to protect. And so you actually become less like that person because you're trying to protect that identity. And that's where we become rigid in identity. And as opposed to being, oh, I am a author, to I'm writing a bit at the moment, but I'm also doing this, and this is what I'm excited about, and this is what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
I think it's something I've written and thought about and talked about so much in the last year or so, which is this, I think, more so prevalent for influencers, creators, public figures with bigger profiles, but also I think for everyone when it comes to social media and an online presence, is that there is this almost inversion of how we're presenting to the world. It's going, here is who I want to be and how I want to present, highlight reel, whatever you want to call it. And that then starts to inform your life rather than actually I'm living and this is a presentation of my life. And it's just been flipped. And I personally feel like we're going to look back in 10, 20 years and go, that's a form of deep social and individual unrest. And,
Yes.
and it's just feels, there's something to me that feels so strange about it. And I've fallen into it 1000%. It is the quickest way for me to pull myself away from who I truly am.
Feeling what you need to feel.
Feeling what you need to feel, because
yes.
even behind closed doors, you're going, but I'm that person. I'm, for me, it was, I'm breathwork Jamie. I have to be calm all the time. We spoke about this, right? And it's been hard graft for me to go, I am me, and I'm me first. And my work, as you said, to use your term, is a vehicle. It's one part of me. It's one way of showing up in the world. I think the tricky thing comes as your audience grows and the numbers grow, is that there are more people out in the world who believe you to be that person.
Yes.
And so it's almost groupthink in a form where you're going, they all seem to think I'm that person, so I need to be that person.
Yeah.
And we're all, I think, as a result of that, crying out to release that pressure valve on each other, that vulnerability, to give that space to be like, I'm actually not doing so good.
Yes.
Or I'm actually not calm all the time. It's like the online persona of ourselves is setting an unrealistic expectation to the world and to ourselves. And it's this filter that we're experiencing our own life through and other people are experiencing us through.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we do about that, because it seems to be so commonplace now. Quickly interrupting this episode to tell you about Whoop, the wearable that tracks your recovery, sleep, and training so that you can optimize your performance. Whoop takes away the need for guessing, gives you real-time insights so you know exactly when to push and when to rest. I've been wearing Whoop on and off for the last 6 years now, and it really is the best of the best. Click the link in the show notes below to find out if Whoop's a good fit for you and where you're at on your journey. And let's get back to the episode.
I think it's like I love this because it again taps into what I'm obsessed with thinking about, which is the shadow, essentially the conversation about the shadow. And I think what we're talking about in this instance is like a fragmentation where we have fragments within ourselves and we place the ideal self forward, that this is what I want people to believe that I am. And again, I really don't want anyone listening to this to think that this conversation is isolated to social media or people that are in the public eye. I think the best place to spot things like this is in romantic
100%.
relationships.
Yeah.
And even in my work, I always come back to interpersonal relationships with all of this, because that is where and then we just replicate the same things online and offline, but that is where we put forward the ideal self. And it happens in such an unconscious way. But for some people, it's a very conscious decision based on whatever your past relationship was like. You decide that, okay, I want to make sure I don't repeat the same mistakes anymore. I want to make sure that I really say what my needs are and what it is that I want. I want to make sure that I dress in the way that I want to dress, the way that this person didn't like before, that I commit to my own routines. Do you remember the conversations you and I had, that I don't kind of negotiate what I was doing before this person came into my life? So we sort of decide that we're going to be this person and we put this person forward. But I think sometimes when we do it in such a fixed, idealistic way, especially for those of us like myself that lean towards perfectionism, I think we don't humanize ourselves in the process. So therefore, the other person doesn't humanize us in the same way. So they might also end up pedestalizing you and expecting that same ideal version of you. And when you veer off course, even just a tiny little bit, they will experience disappointment. Now, that is exactly the same thing with an audience on social media. Because something I remind myself all the time is, Africa, you're training your audience. If you are presenting yourself as this sort of rigid, I am just this intellectual, whatever, bubba, serious expert, you are training it's not actually their fault. I think way too many people put the blame on the audience, but the audience expects this from me, and you're telling them.
Yeah.
If you were to shift and say, actually, I'm also an artist, I'm also writing this, I'm also, it reconfigures. You lose a shit ton of people, but then also more people come in that meet you at eye level. So I find interpersonal relationships are a fantastic mirror for what you will do everywhere else.
Do you train your relationship in the same way? Because I feel like a lot of the time people think, I need to be this person to attract the ideal partner. But you can only maintain that false identity for so long. And when it wears off, well, that's not the person that I fell in love with. I'll speak openly about something that happened to me recently around this. And I shared with Jamie because it was through breathwork. Not with Jamie. I did cheat on him a little bit in this breath. In fairness, it wasn't in the UK. He wasn't available. So I practiced breathwork with somebody else.
He didn't ask if I was available. And he always does this. Presenting this version of himself to me. I had him on this, but it's my fault for putting him on a pedestal. This is the thing.
So yeah, ended the relationship and felt a lot of, you know, as you would, fear, resentment, jealousy, anger, all the things that come up, right? And I was sitting in it, but I didn't create the space to feel into it. As we said, the intellectualizing of the situation. It's only when I went into breath work, and after about 20 minutes, I had an intention around what were the things that I didn't say. And I started to think about all of the things that I felt, all of the moments where I didn't express how I actually felt. And the intention was good. I wanted to protect the other person's feelings. I wanted to protect the relationship. But because I didn't say it, so many things could have been misinterpreted. And then I went down the route of, well, do I go to therapy and talk about this? And it was subtly, the thought came, no, because that person doesn't have context. Who has the most context? My ex-partner. So the next day, call her and say, listen, I've got this idea, and maybe it's a bit out there, but I think you and I should sit down and create a space without judgment, without the pressure of maintaining the relationship. And we can openly express all the things that we didn't say. And we sat for 2 hours and there were so many things. Just like, wow, I thought that was because of that. And it was me, and all of this opportunity to express those things was incredible. It made me realize, wow, I could have saved all of this time, all of this pain, had I lent into the discomfort at the time to express what I actually needed and was actually feeling, rather than trying to create an expectation around the situation and what was best.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems to me, it's a reflection after we've talked quite a lot about this, around the irony or the paradox seemingly of the higher the perceived stakes of the relationship, the higher the likelihood that we have a level of fear around vulnerability, because the vulnerability is the risk of the loss of the thing. If the stakes are high, romantic relationship, family, then actually I wonder, for some people, I know for myself, the chances of self-censorship or self-abandonment go up because the vulnerability piece becomes more scary and more scary. And I find it fascinating because I've had this experience in past relationships as well, where it ends, you have a conversation like that, and the connection booms, blossoms, because finally, because the pressure's been taken off, and the fear, for whatever reason, just because we've removed a label, goes away, and nothing's tangibly changed other than you have, between you, changed the definition, the language, the label of the relationship, but you feel freer to express yourself. And that to me is one of the biggest quandaries that I see in modern romantic relationships, is this fear of vulnerability in a space where we should ultimately be our most comfortable to be vulnerable.
100%. You have both just nailed it. So, and I'm so grateful right now in this moment, because you're both helping me so much in real time as I experience my own heartbreak and grief and reconfiguring a relationship that was so important to me. And just the level of openness and specificity in this conversation, it's just, I'm really grateful for you both right now. And you just articulated it so perfectly in that, and it's a return to that idea of labels, that once there's a label placed on something, the stakes immediately feel so much higher. And you're right, nothing has tangibly changed. You're still the same people, but the meaning you now apply to the relationship is different. That's why that idea of human beings being meaning making machines is just, it grounds all of this in the reality of what it is, the meaning and the assumptions that we give to this. And Louis, you said something that I resonate with, that I'll kind of challenge for you and for myself. So in my work and in what I do, you see me now, and whether I'm having a conflict around anything to do with things that are happening socially or anything else, family, friends, whatever, brave expression is not a fucking issue, okay? It's not an issue. Now, in romantic relationships, I'm still me, the me that I am now. I express myself courageously, but there's a slight regression that happens, whereby I feel so raw and exposed, and I feel like a child again. And when I was a child, that's when I have those initial memories of being punished for telling the truth, or being punished for asking a question, or being punished for putting my needs forward. It felt like a bother, like a burden, because of just the environment that I was in. And there's still that imprint. So that's part of what makes my own shadow. In that, as an adult now, I have all of this understanding, this knowledge, and I speak up in this way. But there's a shadowy aspect of that with certain relationships, mainly relationships with men. And I would find myself not saying certain things because, and where I was saying challenging you and me, is because I thought that it was for the other person, that I didn't want to upset the other person. But that was not the complete truth. I didn't want to sort of nudge that thorn, the thorns that were kind of just on me, you know, that no one else apart from a romantic relationship with a man can rub on. I didn't want that to be touched, and being vulnerable and actually saying my needs will do that. But I also wanted to protect my ego and the way that my partner saw me. I didn't want my partner to see me as weak. There was still unaddressed, I still associated vulnerability with weakness, and I didn't know that, you know. So I thought it was to protect them, and I didn't want to upset them, but that was not really what was happening. It was me protecting myself and my ego and my self-perception and my self-concept. And I would only wait for there to be big things that are obvious for me to talk about. But intimacy is built on those small little things that are addressed, you know. Even it feels like they're happening way too much, you stay and you repair and you fix it, and you know. But I'm so grateful for that relationship, because it really showed me that I still had the shadows of defensiveness. I've curated my life in such a way where I don't experience myself being defensive much at all, because everything is within my control. But then there are some relationships, and the deeper the intimacy, the more those childlike repressed qualities come through. And for me, I remember my ex saying to me, and it was one of the most incredible conversations we had last year. And we were in a conflict, and I was sitting there kind of intellectualizing, and I realized I would do something. And I wonder if you two can resonate. Please resonate with this, because I'm going to need you to. I would weaponize my intellect in conflict without realizing that knowing that I'm doing it.
Maybe I'm so blind to the fact that I do it that I sit here going, I don't think I do. But I probably do, if you ask.
And it would look like I do the work that I do in the realm of psychology. I do the work that I do in kind of understanding the human condition. I can articulate myself very well. And the way that my brain works is that even if something is very abstract, instantly I can understand it and articulate it in a simple way. Again, this is wonderful if you're in business and strategy and work and supporting people. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
you're feeling it. But when you're in a remove romance from it, in an intimate relationship with another primal human being, it is not the place to try and intellectualize. It's actually very disrespectful. Very disrespectful. Instead of using simple language like I feel hurt, I feel sad, I can feel my heart closing, I would find myself withholding that level of vulnerability and intellectualizing what is going on, saying that I'm understanding and giving the image of being understanding. And I would say I was on some level, but knowing that I could go deeper in this moment and just be raw and childlike. And I didn't allow myself to do that. But the intellect would also make me defensive, but not in a way that would be obviously defensive. But it's a very combative energy, you know? And I think when you're able to articulate yourself, there's a way in which you can be very defensive without it looking like defensiveness. But this man, he's absolutely wonderful. And I'll love him forever because he was able to speak to me in a way that no one else could, because he could see me in a way that no one else could. And he was like to me in this conflict, Africa, I'm going to tell you something. And I trust that you're going to receive this in the way that I mean it, because you know my heart. And he was like, when we are in conflict, you can actually be very defensive. And I don't think you realize that. And guess what I responded with?
No.
Defensive.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I'm not defensive. I'm just and then I was like, oh, okay.
It's this.
Okay.
I feel like it's similar to those of us that are very much in our head, right?
Yes.
We're problem solvers, we're fixers.
Yes.
The expression of, I feel like this, receiving that, or I feel like that, I would immediately go to, let's fix it. Let's work on this. Let's figure that out.
Me too.
And actually, all the other person needed was just to be heard, just to be seen, just to be held, just to be witnessed in that expression. And, you know, on reflection, realizing all the times that I had to fix the problem and go out of my way to try and find a solution rather than just being there with it. And I think a lot of men make that mistake because we're, you know, we think that, well, firstly, we take it as a failure on our part if our partner feels anything negative at all. It must be something that I did. It must be, I haven't done enough of X, Y, and Z. But then we very quickly go to, what's the solution? And that isn't what the other person wants. And it's also understanding that for most of us, it's difficult to say what we want. There's an added level of vulnerability to say, I'm feeling this. And that's hard enough. But then to say, and I need you to whatever, that's really challenging, particularly if you enforce that behavior further, if your response is always solution.
Yeah. I'm my brain's joining dots here. And I want to hear if this lands with you guys, because I think tying in what we were saying earlier about social media and people that pursue a career, let's say in the public sphere, maybe in coaching, maybe in providing value to people, helping people, fixing people, serving people, whatever we want to label it, and how that then translates and shows up in relationships from this space of, I can articulate myself well, I understand concepts in the world. And there's an Alain de Botton quote that I always come back to, which I heard on a podcast, which is, our desire to impress others is fundamentally at odds with our desire to connect with them. And I wonder if...
Can we get that on a tote bag?
Yeah. Tattoo. Just and that struck for me because something that I am realizing presently through this conversation and over the last few weeks is exactly what you explained there and described there, which is at home in a romantic relationship, this person doesn't want you to, you're not there to impress them.
No.
You're not there to show yourself in a certain light. You are there to be seen as you are and accepted or not for yourself as you are. And I do feel like perhaps, and this is where the dots start joining for me, is going, was there something, and I know for me in childhood, not necessarily from my parents, but just life more broadly, there was this sense of not being heard, not being seen, perhaps not being important in some way. And now I'm going, oh, relationships, I'm just trying to show how valuable and important I am. Online, in my work, I'm trying to show how valuable and important I am. And of course, we check in with our patterns and go, there are certain things that can be changed, and there are certain things that actually have grown to be strengths in their own right, and everything has a shadow side as well. But for me, at least, looking at just how I show up in arguably the more important aspects of my life as I perceive them, there is this sense that I'm desperately trying to prove myself. And in doing so, there's a form of self-censorship, but there's also, to go back to the Alain de Botton quote, a disconnect, a lack of emotional openness and availability, even though I can stand there and intellectualize my emotional availability. Of course, I'm open. I'm sharing my feelings with you. I'm articulating my feelings to you so openly and perfectly. And yet there's a gap.
There's an incongruence. Yeah. Gosh.
Wow.
TED talk over.
Yeah. This is also kind of at odds with, you know, the pursuit. All of us in some way are working in the space of wellness. We're looking to improve our own and other people's mental, emotional, physical well-being, right? That's a path that we're all on. And it somewhat feels at odds with relationship dynamics insofar as the energy that would motivate you to improve yourself. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to go to yoga. I'm going to create my morning routine. We can become so attached to that path of improving ourselves that we don't create space for showing up for somebody else. And the longer you do that and the more important that becomes to you, the less space you can create. And I'm just realizing the ways that I've been guilty of that. Like, I'm pursuing this in work, and in order to facilitate that work, I'm going to have to do my morning routine, my evening routine, train every day, eat like this, at the cost of that relationship dynamic, which actually, if I think about my mental and emotional well-being, is more nurturing than a lot of those practices.
Right.
Or a balance between the two would be more appropriate. But I think we can get lost in those pursuits and that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And it almost becomes into contention with how we show up for somebody else. And it's a really delicate dance. And I don't know what the answer is, because of course it's that put your mask on first thing, right? Like, in order to show up for the other person, I know I need to be in a good place.
Yeah.
But where is the line where we can almost start to identify with that pursuit to the extent that we lose the capacity to show up for somebody else?
I think it's gosh, I can't wait to listen to this episode myself. I can't wait to listen to this. This
comes from the fact that we've had these conversations so many times that we've never recorded it. So it's like, you should record
and nothing's changed.
And nothing's changed.
For any of us.
You know what? It's so healing. So my thought to that, even though that's not my experience personally, I think outside looking into what you just shared, Louis, I think it's control underpins all of it, even with what I'm going to share for myself. It's like there was a time in life where I didn't have a sense of control, whether it was in childhood or you've experienced addiction or just a period of your life where you were very reckless with your time and your space and your energy and your capacity. And now you're in a season where you try to make up for that, often unconsciously, by trying to have control wherever you can. So I have to control my day and my schedule. And it doesn't matter if you come into my life, you have to get onto my timeline. And it's not by force, but it's just saying, this is who I am as a person. If you want to be a part of my world and to be my person, you have to understand that this is who I am. And I have a lot of friends like that, right? But there's an inbuilt rigidity to that. Because once intimacy comes in, you have to be able to ebb and flow between that masculine and feminine, that polarity, right? Even in your own life, polarity before the person comes in. So I think it's honoring what you need in order for you to be whole as a person, in order for you to not be fragmented. But also, how do you make room for someone else? Because as a woman being with a man like you, I would really want to support you in your vision for your own personal health and your professional health and whatever you're doing. But also there needs to be room for me in your life. I need to feel needed by you. I need to feel that at times, no, you won't be compromising or negotiating your schedule, your plans all the time. But sometimes you'll be able to be like, actually, no, I don't need to do that right now. We can do this right now. And you won't feel like it's a self-betrayal. It will just feel like you're showing me that there is room for me in your world. I'm not just stepping into your world and then we're going out there, you know, we're two people bringing their worlds together. But I think I experienced something of the opposite that I have to work on, whereby when I'm single, I'm really not the kind of person that's like, go, go, go. I need to be successful. Everything that I do now, the company that I've built, the work that I do, it's all been so accidental. I just needed to get well. And I started sharing my story 9 years ago. And I've just been fascinated in very specific areas of psychology and human behavior. And I got trained in that and it's become my work. But I've never had the thing of, I need to build this and then that. I'm just very fucking good at what I do and it fascinates me. So I've been able to build all of this, right? And there is a masculine energy that's required for that. But in relationship, I don't have that. Like, I'm just a very soft, feminine, cool woman who's just kind of just doing her thing. I want to be led by a man. I want a man. I remember the women screaming in shock when I said that on my podcast, when I was like, I recorded an episode called My Deep Desire to be Led by a Man. And I was talking about how my most primal desire is to submit to a man, you know, who's grounded in his own integrity. And again, because people assumed that I'm a feminist, blah, 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 they were like shocked. But anyway, I say this to say that my thing is that when I'm single, I am very focused on my mission and my purpose and my path and my health and working out and blah, blah, blah. But then I find that in relationship, I sometimes end up negotiating that. It's a very odd thing that I've shared with you, Jamie, whereby I feel like, how do I even articulate it? Because I haven't articulated it much. Almost that I want the person to know that I am letting them into my world to a point where I will stop doing some of my own things in order for them to fit in. And then I will become resentful about it. But I never fucking told them that it's a priority for me. And then end up unconsciously punishing them because why are you here all the time? But I never told you that, by the way, baby, I love spending time. We'll spend all the time we need. But in the mornings, I do need to read for an hour. I do need to do some movement. I need to make sure that I'm studying every day. Even asking them, can you please make sure that I do this thing? And then it becomes...
Yes, you bring them into it.
You bring them into it. But I would just, in our bubble, which I love anyway, but then I'm realizing that, I haven't written as much this week. I haven't been studying. I haven't been... And then we're just sort of, and then there's an undercurrent of annoyance and resentment and irritation because now I feel like, why are we together all the time? And I also haven't communicated that as much as I'm a very tactile, close person, I actually don't need to be together all the time. I need you to have a level of independence for yourself. I want to be in awe of you and your world and what you do and your social life. I don't want you to make me your everything. These are things that I realized I wasn't really articulating in the way that I thought. There was a element of hoping they would mind read expectations. I had the expectations and then eventually punished them for the silent expectations that I had.
Yeah, you know? It resonates so much with me as well. And the responsibility that we have to take for that communication. And if the needs aren't being met in some way, where is your responsibility within that? And it actually reminded me of something I wanted to mention earlier where we were talking about social media audiences and relationships in this management of and your responsibility in that, because I'm a sucker for claiming that nobody understands me. People just don't get me. My partner doesn't get me. My audience they don't seem to know me. And then I sit back here and I go, how could they possibly, if I've never expressed that? How could they possibly, if they don't have any idea, they've never glimpsed that, because there's a self-preservation, there's a protection, there's a fear of the vulnerability of being seen or it being rejected in some way. And so, yeah, I think it's just fascinating, the threads that bind all of this together.
I'm like having download after download throughout the conversation. I love that you said what I love that you said, and it was almost didn't belong within the context of what you were saying. So forgive me for pulling this out, because what you said was amazing, and I received a lot of understanding from what you said. But you said, I'm fucking good at what I do. And I wish I heard that from more people who are fucking good at what they do. And it's almost like we're not allowed to say that we're good at what we do. This particular thing that I do, I'm fucking good at. And if you want other people to believe that you're good at, and you believe that you've got a message, you have to believe it first and foremost. And there is nothing wrong. There's nothing arrogant about saying, I'm fucking good at what I do. It's then what you do with that. Is it then a gift that you give to the world? Or do you spend your time reinforcing and looking for validation that you are? And they're very different energies. Very different energies. So say it. I'm fucking good at what I do.
Oh, I love that. I really love that, because it indirectly ties into what you're saying around seeing people don't understand me. People don't understand me, etc., etc. That energy is so important to see it and to integrate it, not so you can feed it, but so you can make peace with it and let it go. Because you could be doing all the right things externally. Things could look like they're happening very well for you. You could be working with the right clients at the right places, but you will be emitting that energy and people will feel it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Because it will always be like a sort of just a subtle emission of just like insecurity. And it's very, because you'll be saying the right thing, but just people won't quite be able to believe you. So I love that you're in tying this all together, being like, I'm actually fucking good at what I do, and I'm experiencing this thing that tells me people don't quite understand it, and but get rid of that. It's why for me personally, I no longer believe or speak so much about imposter syndrome. I don't believe that it exists for me in that sense. I believe, though, that sometimes you're actually not ready to do the thing you think you are. I think that's an underappreciated aspect of the imposter syndrome conversation, because the assumption is, oh, it's just a mindset issue. Sometimes it's a practical issue. You haven't done the thing enough to feel. It's the kind of confidence, competence cycle, right? And I think you have to be very honest with yourself. How long, and you can look at it objectively in this instance. Oh, I've only been doing this for a year or 3 years, 4 years. It makes sense that I don't feel as confident about it. Because I think there's an entitlement in modern day society where people are like, oh, Africa, because I'm a business strategist as well. So people are like, oh, Africa, I've been doing this thing for 4 years, and nothing's happened. That's not a long time. In business, I'm sorry, I just don't think it's that long of time.
Particularly on the topic of mastery, right?
There you go.
I see it in breath work as a microcosm of this wider issue of this impatience and this idea that within a year you can be here. And I sit in a place now. I said to you the other day, I feel like I know less about breathwork now than I did 2 years ago, because of the whole Dunning-Kruger effect thing, right? Of this peak of what they call peak of Mount Stupid, where you've been doing it for a small amount of time, but you've learned a lot in a short space of time, and you go, wow, I must be really good at this. And then you start to become nobody, and you go, there's so much I don't know. And embracing the not knowing is part of the road to mastery.
Absolutely.
Right? And just sitting in that place of inner knowing that I know what I know, I'm fucking good at what I do. And that's enough for where I am right here, right now. Because it's either a reach forward or a kind of reach back, where you're going, oh, but I should know more, or I don't know enough.
Continue to be a student forever.
It almost serves you to fail sooner in the journey, or to meet resistance sooner in the journey.
Absolutely.
I could play the context of business. I started my first business when I was very young. And the first two went really well. It was actually damaging to me, because I think I'm so good at this. I'm amazing.
The false sense of
the false competence, right? And now I'm like, 17 years in, I don't have a clue.
Old.
And every day I meet stuff. I'm getting there. I'm actually 35 on Monday. Thank you. I don't look it. I know. I've been telling you I'm using my solar wave. Not a sponsor. I can't believe I did that. This red light wands thing is amazing.
Is it just that? Just that?
Just that.
If you
Don't
know,
talk about my
you
injection.
know.
But to that point about false competence is that if you have success early on, when perhaps there's an external circumstance that contributes to that. Yes, of course, you've probably done something right. And I did, but I wasn't aware. It wasn't intentional. It wasn't conscious. It was like almost accidental. And then I had a string of businesses that just didn't work. I was like, wow, maybe I'm not who I thought I was. And to come full circle now, this far in, on the current project that I'm working on is the biggest project I've ever taken on. And I'm now really comfortable with saying meetings, guys, I haven't got a clue what you're talking about. I don't know what you mean. Whereas perhaps before, I would just pretend that I understood and I'd miss out on that learning opportunity, especially when people use abbreviations and, sorry, what do you mean? I don't know. And it's refreshing to be able to have the confidence to express that I don't understand something because I'm not restricted by the perceived competence that I should have after so much time doing it, right?
Oh, I love that. Oh, I love that.
So
we could
carry
go
on for a very long time.
I'm
Tom's
gonna have
just
to
waved
come
at me for the 5th time. So we'll have to do round 2 and dive into more stuff.
Please.
Before we close, I just want to really lean in and tune into the practical and the tangible for people. And you may remember this, you may not remember this. When we first met at Coco, the thing I said to you about your gift is that you are so comfortable in your own skin that you give others permission to do the same.
I remember that.
For anybody wanting to start out on this journey of unlocking and unpacking self-censorship, self-abandonment, whatever it might be, where can people begin?
I think you first have to understand and to really see and get honest, though, about what's working against you. Because I think we like to rush to the strategic side of things. But if you don't really know what's working against you, you don't know what it is you need to change. And the best way I think of this in terms of some kind of practicality is if you take a look at the results in your life right now, without trying to change anything or to judge anything, you will see what's working against you. Whether it's in the realm of health or money, just look at your bank account or how your spending has been for the past 3 months. If you look at your relationships, do you have any ambiguous relationships hanging around where you don't quite know if you like this person or not? You usually bond through gossip. There's just something about your relationships that doesn't feel strong, or you feel like you can't share your opinions about certain things. If you look at your family relationships, do you find that you have to really hide a big part of who you are to your family? Just look at the results that you have in your life. They will show you what is working and what's working against you. So I think that's a good place to start.
I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And on that note, Africa, thank you so much. One of the best conversations I've ever had, I think. I think I feel very comfortable saying that, honestly. And I hope everybody else found it as valuable. I'm sure they did. And we'll be sharing everything about how people can connect with you and your work in the show notes. So we don't need to go into it right now. But I think that is a great place to end. Thank you all so much.
Thank you
for being here. Thank you everybody for tuning in, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.